supplement in the amount of $444,047.93 to the FY21 school budget, with $421,575.04 from federal funds reserve revenue source for school food expenditure category, and $22,472.89 from state sales tax revenue for instructional expenditure category. This is an action item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve both the revenue and the expenditure of those two items and the line items that were given to us in.
Second.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Ms. Cookham?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Turman?
Yes.
And Mr. Coleman is absent. The next item is again related to the schools. Revenue and expenditure budget supplement in the amount of $77,166 to the FY21 school budget from state funds revenue source to the instructional category expenditure category for the FY21 Advancing Computer Science Education Grant. And this is an action item.
On here, it says carried over into the FY.
That's the next item.
Oh, that's the next
They
item.
get it right at the end of the year, don't have a chance to spend
Well,
it, they have to accept it.
Right,
Accept
gotcha,
it.
gotcha.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the revenue and state funds and also the expenditures in the instructional category as presented.
Motion second.
Second.
Motion second.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Ms. Cookham?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Turman?
Yes.
And Mr. Coleman, yes. All right, now, page 2. 9I, carryover request at $77,166 from FY21 Advancing Computer Science Education State Grant be carried to FY22 School Board Operational Budget. And this is an action item.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the carryover request from the school in the amount of $77,166.
Second.
Motion second, roll call.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Ms. Cookham?
So this was a grant and they want to put it in their operational budget?
This is the grant Jessica Cromer has told us about,
Yeah.
and it's a multi-year grant. And like I said, they get it so late in the
Okay.
year that they can't spend it that year, so they get it like in June, but they were asking their permission to spend it in
Yeah, okay.
fiscal year 22.
It's essentially housekeeping.
Correct.
We want to spend it over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
next
yeah.
physical year. but
On computers.
It's
Yes.
another budget year, so we've got to go through this
It's not
process
on
to get it there.
Computers,
It's a grant she got for teaching
right.
computer, instructional
Literacy.
technology,
Right.
right, literacy to the
All right,
students.
yes, I'll vote yes. Thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that.
All right, and Mr. Turman?
Yes.
All right, and of course, Mr. Coleman continues to be first. 9J, Mr. Chair, is your next item. Carry over request, the $221,990.29 from FY21 schools budget to the Capital Improvement Fund with planned expenditures for new welding equipment at the Floyd County Vocational School, new outdoor basketball goals at Floyd Elementary School, and new carpet at Floyd County High School. And this is an action item.
I make a motion that we approve the carryover of $221,990.29 for the appropriate expenditures that was mentioned.
I'll second that with, can I ask a question? We do have that much in their capital improvement fund, I'm assuming.
Actually, what they're doing here is their revenues have exceeded their expenditures on a cash basis
Right.
for fiscal year '21. So what they're asking is what they ask every year, the excess money be put into the capital improvement fund to be used for things in the future. And they're just kind of giving us a heads up that these are some of the
They're
things.
gonna be spending it on, okay.
Yeah.
I misunderstood. I thought that was the money that was in the capital improvement fund.
If they're asking
Yeah,
this money.
because that's been our practice in the past is
Correct.
any money they carry over, then they use on one-time expenses. So, okay, yeah, thank you.
And I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Would it be that they just, I mean, for new welding equipment at the Floyd County Vocational School, one would almost have to think that this new equipment would be going to their new CCDC building, so I would assume that's just grammatical or semantics.
I thought so too. I was thinking it seems like they would have called it.
Yeah, you would have thought.
They're still using my old terms,
Oh,
whoever.
I'm just, when I read it the first time, I read, it said new carpet at Floyd County High School, but I read new Floyd County High School somehow. And I thought, yeah, people are still calling it that. And I read back and it's like, oh, new carpet at the Floyd County.
Anyway, I
But it's
just,
the new school to a lot of people still.
Yep.
yeah. I don't know, I just,
I caught that too.
okay. At least I'm not the only one. Sorry about that. Not sorry, I mean,
We have a motion and a
second,
second.
yeah. We just had discussion.
All right. Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Yoder?
Yes.
Ms. Cookinger?
Yes,
Mr. Turman?
Yes,
And Mr. Coleman is absent. All right, 9J. And as you know, you already addressed 9K. So that was the last of your voting items. The rest is kind of updating you all, if that's all right, quickly. Although I would like to get the sense of the board on L. So as you see in your packet, I was contacted by Captain Corey Moore, who is an Army officer assigned to the U.S. Selected Service System. And they are looking for some positions to be, 2 positions to be filled on the local board. And so the question is, and I've emailed back and forth with Mr. Moore, and the question is, do you all want to make this your appointments? Or he also said, or we could just help him advertise and let the public know that these are out there and they could apply to him directly.
who's currently on our board?
And how were those appointments made previously?
He had no additional information. I think this is something that they had across the board kind of let fall off, obviously because there's not been a draft in some time. But now he's been directed to revitalize those, and so Floyd has 2 spots. So I asked what are other communities doing, and his indication was it's kind of mixed. People can volunteer or can be appointed to the board of supervisors.
I'm in a unique situation, I guess, that I would be somewhat interested in serving in this if it was possible, because my background, I grew up in a Mennonite family, which would have been, my grandfather actually received a deferment he was Amish. They received a deferment in World War II and served as an orderly in a medical hospital for a military medical hospital, but wasn't in action. I'm no longer part of that community, but I do feel like maybe I've got a unique set of perspectives for some of those people with those beliefs, and could possibly give some insight to that. So I mean, I would be interested in serving if appropriate.
can you be 2 board members?
I don't want to jump in front of somebody. I just
Yeah.
I can
I would be
certainly.
interested.
Find out if you can, because I don't mind on the other one,
Yeah.
because I could go on the other side.
Yeah, you have to have some different perspective. I mean, I think it's important to have a variety of people there.
I would like to know who our board is, and, I mean,
I think once the draft was no more,
Yeah.
that they just sort
Dropped
of
it.
let it slide. And, this is just, the way I understand it,
Did you
just in
say how
case,
many was up? I'm sorry, go ahead.
this is just in case the draft is reinstated.
But it says we currently have 2 local board vacancies, so there are only 2 people?
No, that's what I was getting ready to ask.
Right.
Did he mention how big this board was?
And it's a regional board.
So I can find out more information.
It's a local
I wanna get.
community.
Yeah.
Doesn't really
I
say.
can follow up, and as one of the things I'll ask is would 2 board members be eligible?
Okay, we'll take it up.
I will take that up to follow up. All right.
Almost scary to think about it though now. What made you think about it?
Yeah, right, why all of a
Fixing this now
sudden
that
you
it's been years.
Yeah, was he knows coming or we
Yeah,
don't?
that's what I thought when I read it. It's like, oh,
Yeah. Yes.
It's not good, is it?
Okay. On other suspicious news, so, when I first got here, we got our initial reports back from the state related to landfill and some of those things, and that continues to be a discussion. So, we are at a point now that we've gotten some more feedback from the state, and, I'll be scheduling a meeting. Billy and myself from our consultancy will be meeting with them. All of the paperwork was submitted timely, quite reasonable, all those kind of things. No new VOCs were detected, no new GPS exceedance were noted. There are some issues related to cobalt and a couple of other things that we'll have at S4. So our discussion will center around that. So I'm bringing this to your attention just to let you know that this will be a continuing conversation. And there is, depending how that conversation goes, the possibility of some additional cost, potentially as much as $75,000 to $100,000 over the course of 2 years, worst case scenario. It could end up being much better than that, and we're hoping for that, but again, felt it necessary to alert you. That's kind of where we are on that situation. Questions about that? On a more positive note, status on hiring for a tourism director. Kayla Cox and myself interviewed 7 kids. We actually got 61, now I have 63 candidates for the position. And so in this case, using Indeed was very helpful to generate some response. As a side note, we also ended up with 10 applications for solid waste, which is kind of also, I understand, unheard of. But in terms of hiring for the tourism director, Ms. Cox and I did phone interviews with 7 people, and we have selected 3 candidates to move forward. And we have gotten 2 more applications since we did those. So she and I need to chat a little bit more and see if they need to be added to the pool or not. But 3 going forward for an interview, and in that interview we'll be including as well for advice and good insights of a representative both from your board here. Ms. Cookbook has offered to sit in, as has one of the representatives from the town who was previously on the TDC. Kind of depending on timing, it might make a difference of which one. But they have agreed to sit in with us. So we're excited about what folks we might have. There has also been a contract, an agreement executed with Ms. Sharkey to keep her through the end of the month, and we may discuss some things after that. But so she is a town employee as a fiscal agent, and your MOU has been signed by both myself and Kayla Cox. So we're really close to putting a bow on that for a little while. So I'm kind of excited about that. Questions? Renew the Little River. You all, of course, included some funding for this in the budget. And so we've started working. Of course, the chamber has definitely beat us out of the gate on this in a big way for their part. So I'm kind of catching up a little bit with them. And I'm also have reached out to my counterpart another county administrator that kind of takes the lead on this, and so we'll be working with them to go through the process. And Tabitha is actually, between Tabitha and John, they've been able to unearth many of the old forms and all that kind of thing, so that's been really helpful. So we'll be moving forward with that, more details to follow. Maintenance update, you all know I put out a new maintenance request form in Plebe. And so I've gotten some of those back, although I would encourage all of the folks who are directors or constitutional officers, as they see things, to continue to turn them into us, because unless they're on the list, they may not necessarily be on our radar. But I get now daily updates and daily plans about what we're planning to do maintenance-wise. Recently, most things have been centered around some of those recurring leaks at the courthouse. And so there's been quite a bit of work around that. Personnel policy update. As you all know, the General Assembly made a change related to comp time versus overtime for a certain class of employees. Many of those who are generally, even though it's a Virginia thing, it's those that are not exempt from Fair Labor Standards Act, that going forward, if they are under the Fair Labor Standards Act, if they earn such time, it needs to be paid out in actual payment as opposed to payment in comp time. In both cases, it's a time and a half. So that is what we are moving forward and started doing, and I notified all the supervisors that is what's going on. So you'll start seeing, you potentially see some movement in some of the actual cash outlay numbers. Having said that, there is, my understanding, a movement afoot with the General Assembly to revisit this issue at their August session to do some type of fix, and then a temporary fix, and then potentially a permanent fix. I have not seen any language related to what said fix might look like. So right now we're continuing to operate, and all of your directors have been told that for now you should assume for budgeting purposes that if somebody's working outside of the 40 hours, more than the 40 hours, then they will be paid time and a half over and not comp time. So
That's a scary thing to hear. The General Assembly's gonna fix something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And nobody's seen anything.
Of course.
yeah. So but we'll see. We'll see what the solution there turns out to be. And then the final item I have on here is just kind of a quick update on the American Rescue Plan, local government funds. And I started working on the grant program. As you all recall, you had asked that I essentially put together a grant program, which we knew more about the specifics, and ask folks in the community, including our own department heads, to submit something in writing with their request. Of course, as you know, between the two tranches of money, the county will receive about $3.1 million. Half of that funding is already in our accounts, and we will have to submit in August some paperwork related to how we use the funds to date, what our plans are, those kind of things. So in terms of areas for funding, the initial guidance limits the use of the fiscal recovery funds to 4 primary authorized uses: response to public health needs and economic damage from the pandemic. That language is really similar to the CARES Act language. Provide premium or hazard pay for essential workers, also very similar to the CARES Act. Replacing lost revenue, and we'll go back to that, or investing in necessary water and broadband infrastructure. More recently, there has been additional guidance issued by the Treasury that clarifies that the state and local first fiscal recovery funds can support necessary investments in drinking water, water and stormwater, and high-quality broadband service. The interim final rule defines necessary investments as those designated to provide an adequate minimum level of service and are unlikely to be made using private sources of funds. As you read through the remaining documentation related to this, it seems fairly clear. Myself, some of the other administrators and managers have been working through it, and It's generally thought that it can be used to buy new things related to water sewer broadband, but not for operations. And I say that with an asterisk. So there is a provision in the American Rescue Plan that if you are able to prove a revenue loss of a certain level, then you have more options available to you. Cindy has dutifully, multiple times, run our numbers and worked with our accountant to make sure that we're using the exact numbers. And unfortunately, it looks like we did. The good side is you didn't see a big revenue loss. The downside means that the level of flexibility that we had hoped to have was likely not there. So we will pretty much need to expend on those categories that are here. So I've kind of come up with a front and a back draft so far. I'll clean it up a little bit more, but just as an update, kind of let you know generally what questions I would be asking. And if you have comments, other than that, I probably need to describe things a little bit more. That's generally what we'll be asking people.
What you'll send out.
Yes, I'll try to beef it up a little bit more, with a little more background, but in terms of the information that I'd be requesting, I think that's it. So if you have suggestions, and then of course,
going out soon?
Yes, hopefully here within just a couple of days, once I have a chance to hear back from you all. And to just clarify to everyone who hasn't been to all these meetings, if I might, Mr. Chair, what the board had directed me to do is put together a grant application, simple but clear, and then we would collect, and when I send it out, I'll put a date on it, that we would collect information from folks that would like to apply. And part of the reason that we are asking, and the board has asked for an application, is so later when we have to go through an audit, we will have a clear and bright line between the uses of the funds in the legislation. For those of you that don't have the piece of paper in front of you, I have some extra copies, but it's one of the questions is how does this relate to the areas where we're allowed to spend funds? And then we would also move at the point we get information back from folks to have a public hearing about how you all, to hear from people, and that, so we will meet that requirement as well as part of the process.
If I understand it, you're right, you can buy, like for example, we could replace a water line, but we couldn't pay for, like if there was a water main break, we couldn't pay for someone to go out and patch, because that would be more operations. Is that
No,
what I'm
I'm a little nervous about having my attorney in the room answering the questions.
Okay, well,
I'll say it's my best shot, but
No, you can say that.
no.
I mean, it's not clear.
It's not clear, but my best shot and our understanding is, really the intention is for things to improve public health, so things like potentially, well, I've seen a list from someone about maybe fixing the PSA wells or replacing some pipes, those kind of things. But in terms of just paying for operations, that would not be allowed because we don't have this extra flexibility.
And really,
You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's one-time money, so we wouldn't want to get into operations because then a year from now, how are you going to pay for those operations?
Correct.
The system should support itself there, but if you could.
You could prevent,
Yeah.
right, if you could take the pipes that are constantly breaking and replace them with new pipe, then you wouldn't have the operational repair and maintenance needs that you would have. So that's the concept.
Yeah, and that's kind of.
And what kind of a response have you gotten from department heads and folks? Have you gotten people that have said, yeah, we're really looking forward to this, or?
We've gotten some very specific response. The ESA has sent in their list, prioritized, that's been helpful. And also, I've encouraged some of our other employees to go back and read this and think about how they could potentially utilize this to expand some things they were thinking about, particularly around public health.
Good.
And so I think there might be some possibilities for some of our departments, and then of course also people in the community
Yeah.
So those are all positive.
I have a question. Let's say I'm with an organization. We filled the paperwork out, told what the money's gonna be spent on. Yeah, you get scooting. You're gonna have to rule on it. They've met the criteria. It's been reviewed. It says, all right, that is allowed. It's an allowable expense under all the rules and regulations. That organization spends the money on that. And somewhere in the process, somewhere up the line, somebody says, oh, no, that's not what that was intended. Now, I know the county's on the hook for it, but we certainly don't expect whoever we gave this money to reimburse the county if they were acting in good faith and kept it within the confines of what was approved. Is that, I see him smacking his lips back there, so
He's looking at me, I'm looking at him, so.
I'll just say this. We give the money to the PSA. It's for, I'm just going to use that.
We're gonna jerk the place back in the ground.
It's for a specific purpose. It's approved, all the preliminaries, everything's fine, and that's what it's spent on. But some Yahoo up the state line says, oh, no, that didn't qualify. Now, the county's on the hook for that amount of money. Are we requiring whoever we gave it to somehow reimburse us because it didn't qualify?
I haven't looked at the issue as far as third party repayment liability. I could look at it.
Because I don't think from where I stand, not because it's PSA, it's anybody. If in the preliminary process, they've met the guidelines, they've been given the approval, and they still spend that funding exactly like they said they would, I don't think it's right for us or whoever to go back and say, all right, this has now been disallowed, you're gonna have to pay us X number of dollars back.
I was waiting for him to say, do we go after the attorney for giving us bad advice?
Well, no, I'm not going that far
Let the
right
record
now.
reflect, I have a good opinion about
But you understand what I'm saying, and I think so we all need, the state constantly tweaks because the federal government tweaks. If we give money, and that could happen on what we've already spent in this other program, somebody up the line could say all of a sudden, oh no, that didn't, are we as a board going back to those people and saying, or those groups and say, well, as it turns out that wasn't right, so you're gonna have to pay us the money?
So Cindy has worked with our auditors, and Linda has also jumped in since joining and been very clear about how we spent our monies prior. With this new money, Sands Anderson has done a very deep dive, perhaps not personally you, Steve, but your firm has, to give your representing counties a better understanding of where things go. It is my understanding that if we maintain public health, infrastructure, water, sewer, broadband, those kinds of things that can directly be circled back into public health, then the idea is that we're on relatively sure footing. I understand your questions, Jerry, about what happens if somebody at the state level decides that that's not covered, but...
Well, I just think it's something we should decide or have some thoughts on, and something maybe legal counsel should be thinking about too. I guess it comes down to whether whoever sitting at this table wants to take that action.
Right.
I'm just saying right now, from my personal, if they still expended on what they requested.
Right.
And they got the clearance, and suddenly from the state, there's some new interpretation, I think they should be held harmless.
Right.
Well, and if I might, particularly on the things related to environment and public health, there's specific reference to some existing federal programs that if this project would have qualified for this existing federal program, then it's qualified. So while I certainly understand your concern, it is someplace where there's more precedence where before, when you
Yeah.
all were trying to distribute money
There
under
was
CARES, there was
Yeah,
none.
right, there was none.
So I think to the extent there is a risk, it's potentially
Less.
less if you follow
Less.
those
Yeah.
requirements. But beyond that, that's as much of a lawyer as I'm gonna play as a non-lawyer.
Well, it's something I've been thinking
Well, you're on
about,
TV.
and we had not discussed that aspect of it, other than the point the county's on the hook for
Right.
anything. If the county's on the hook, no matter what, for whatever,
Yeah.
if anything gets disallowed.
Right.
I'd be happy to look into it and answer that question for you. In the absence of a federal regulation holding those third parties liable, generally my recommendation to include an indemnity to hold the county harmless anyway.
Right.
That's typically my recommendation. Whether or not you enforce it on any given circumstances is a judgment call.
Can I circle back to the new little, we're looking at August 28th, is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, just making sure.
Mhm.
All right.
Very close around the corner. I gather the chamber has started collecting some registrations already. They've done some things at the
They've done
small
parades.
town and those kind of things. So as soon as we get through this meeting, we'll start moving our
Right.
stuff forward. Almost in touch.
Almost lunchtime.
That's right. I think the only other thing that I had is just, to let you know that Cindy continues to do an amazing job of doing all your reporting related to CARES and some other things. And so in terms of the CARES Act money, I think we're now down to only $24,000 remaining. So I just wanted to basically give her a shout out
Yes.
for doing a pretty amazing job on all that, because it was done very quickly.
Absolutely.
And I want you to notice there's 41,000 obligated to the Newber task force.
Right.
We didn't get any bill at all the last quarter. Oh, we didn't get invoice the last quarter. And I called over there and asked for one, and they said they couldn't get it ready. And I said, could you at least tell me how much of this obligated amount we might be having to pay? And they couldn't tell me that either. So any pressure you could put on them to get us the final invoice so that we will know if there's more money available, and if so,
Because it could be 66,000.
it could be 66,000, which might give us an opportunity to buy some equipment for EMS.
Yeah.
Obligated
Well,
folks.
well, I have asked for I've asked for an audit of all monies spent by the task force. It seemed like my position as the regional commission representative along with Mr. Coleman, that they got a lot of money and got a lot of money from a lot of us. And I would like to see how it was spent correctly. It all went through Montgomery County. So they got it, Cindy and I talked about this earlier this morning before our meeting started. All of this stuff started in June of last year, so they'll be coming out of their fiscal year as well. So hopefully we will see an audit. I will ask at every regional commission meeting I attend. We don't have one in July, but I will do so in August and continue to ask for the auditing of all this monies that everybody gave. I'd just like to see where it all went. And I will make mention, find out if I can get an invoice for us. And we can't really, as I understand, Cindy, we can't unobligate ourselves, right?
We can't, that's why we want to
Right.
get that final bill and pay it and know what's left. We can't unobligate it.
And maybe they don't need any more money, and that would be fine, and we can have it, and it'd go to us, and we can use it for our own purposes. But I wanna see an audit. I wanna see where everything got spent.
They don't give you an actual financial statement?
We've never really seen, I mean, we've seen little bits and pieces, but I've never seen that I can remember. Cindy hasn't, I mean, nobody has ever seen, I mean, I know they've talked about spending $375,000 on masks. You can hold one up if you'd like, Jerry. But,
About 5 or 10.
there you go. But
A whole pack of
you know, this is nothing directed at the regional task force. They did some amazing work, but that was a lot of money, and I would like to say there was a lot of money a lot of money from Floyd. We may have only put in some of the slightest bit, but every dollar that left Floyd County was money that we didn't get to spend in Floyd County, and I just would like to see, I love regionalism, don't get me wrong, we've got an area that works really well together, and this was a once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully, situation, but I would like to see how that money got spent.
When's the deadline? Is it the end of this
December
fiscal year?
Yeah.
December 31st.
Is there a point that we could at least tell them if they don't have an invoice by a certain date that we're not gonna pay?
I'd love to say that as of September 30th, so that it would give us 3 months to purchase
I mean,
something. And
My fear is they wait till 1st December and then send us the bill for 20,000, and now all of a sudden we're back where we were last December, like,
Yeah.
in a panic, not panic, but we had to move quickly, we thought. and then we
Right.
didn't,
Then we didn't, then we did, then we didn't.
To be able to do that, would we need to do anything to be able to, or we just,
I mean, maybe it goes into your court with your managers meetings?
And if that doesn't work, maybe our attorney could write a letter.
Or I put it on my to-do list to follow up.
Anything I can do, I gladly do.
Not that I would hook you or anything.
Not.
Not from Jerry.
Is that all you got?
Mr. Chair, I think that is. I'll be putting, as you know, I've been looking at some organizational things and we'll start making some of those moves. And I'll announce to the staff and include you in those things.
I wanted to say one thing, double back on this, tourism. I may have already told the board before, I don't know, my days been running interview lately, but for the people present and the ones on Facebook, you wonder what tourism's doing for us. If you go down Interstate 77, and you turn around and you start back up, I sent Jerry a picture. Stop at the rest area and just go in there, because I did there today just out of curiosity, and I was
Impressed, huh?
2/3 of that rest area is Floyd County, everything. And I think I was talking to you, I guess they got tired of me wandering around and they asked me who I was. And I told them, I said, well, I was actually from Floyd, and I sat on the board, and after that, I got the presidential treatment, They even went in a meeting and brought 2 people out, talked to me, and they was really impressed with Floyd on their own. And they said they had numerous people come in there, and they just passing food, didn't know what to do. They said, well, here, look Floyd. And they ended up coming to Country Store on Friday night, or come down Parkway, or Marset Winery, or, it was really nice, and especially when it's late out. So.
and Pat has done an amazing job working with them, building that relationship.
Absolutely.
To the point that now other communities around us wish they had that relationship, but she really built it when nobody
She
else was
did,
doing it.
nobody wanted to do it.
She built it from
She
the
saw an
ground up.
opportunity and she jumped on it, and now there's people jealous of what we're doing.
And,
I won't mention the other 2 counties, but they had little corners. Floyd had, 2/3 of it. So.
and it's funny, a lot of people think I-81 is like the gateway in, but for Floyd County, 221, that Lambsburg exit on Interstate I-77 brings in so many people from Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, everybody.
And the other direction as well.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, that's a really important avenue, gateway.
It just always amazing. She talked about how many people would change their route.
Yeah, in our meetings.
In our tourism meetings, and I always just sat there and thought, my goodness, if I was traveling to, let's say I go to Florida, I'd never do a detour. I guess it's just me, I'd have all 10 days planned out, everybody that have hotel reserved, and I guess some people aren't that way.
You're not
They're just-
retired.
Yeah, some people just, all right, let's go and see what happens.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a better way of living, actually.
You're one of those people that don't plan.
We took a month trip out west, and I had every night booked in a hotel before we left. And I told my wife, actually not too long ago, I said, I wonder what that trip, if we just went and seen where we went, I wonder how that would've went. She's like, yeah, probably would've been nicer. 'Cause I would've been like, we're getting up this morning, we're leaving at 6 a.m., we've got 400 miles to go. She's like,
You are
"Oh,
in the
You're like-
military.
You're like in the movie, we're moving, we're moving, we're moving.
yeah." Yeah, she said, man, that would have been nice.
So if there's nothing else, I'll say the magic words and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.